Good Monday morning. We are all back together, except for Jerry Recco, who will join us tomorrow.
He's
it's
lazy.
a start of a new year. No, it's not lazy. He's working. He's calling Rutgers basketball. Today is the 5-year anniversary of Boomer and Gio as we start year 6. I know that the Tuesday after Labor Day is your big anniversary of when you started here at WFAN, but this is the 5-year anniversary of Boomer and Gio, which is a cool thing as we get started here on January 2nd, 2023. And we've got two very different stories in the world of New York football. The Jets are eliminated, and the Giants will continue to play as they clinched a playoff berth in impressive fashion at home against the Indianapolis Colts yesterday. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Good morning, G. I'm ready and rested, and I'm ready to go here today, and it's going to be a big day here because, as you said, the Giants made the playoffs. Nobody, and I mean nobody, including yours truly, ever thought that they would even come close to the playoffs, let alone make it and play in a Week 18 game where it means nothing for them, but it means everything for the Philadelphia Eagles, who are in the middle of a late-season collapse because of their quarterback and him being hurt, and they are not the same team without Jalen Hurts. So who would have thought, say, 3 weeks ago, that the Giants would end up playing in a Week 18 game where Brian Daboll can use this as a little bit of a bye for certain players that probably are a little bit nicked up and don't need to play in a game. That's how topsy-turvy the end of this NFL season is gone. And it's one of the reasons why, we always talk about how, listen, man, you can get off to a bad start. You could be an 0-4 team after 4 weeks because of a 17-game season, because of all the different injuries, because of all the different twists and turns of the NFL season. Here we are at the end of Week 17 with an unbelievable game tonight. That is all about seeding. It's all about the AFC North. It's all about whether or not Buffalo can hold on to the number 1 seed. Cincinnati can move up to the number 2 seed if they win, and Buffalo would move down to the number 3 seed. So there's a lot riding on this game tonight. And quite frankly, when I look at what Daniel Jones did yesterday, I will say what I said about 6 weeks ago. Why would he want to go play somewhere else?
Oh, there's no way he's going to want to play somewhere else, and it seems like the Giants don't want to play somewhere else either, as we're starting to hear those reports that he is indeed coming back, which is what Phil Simms said about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, he said he was going to be the quarterback, and it kind of got brushed over, and then he had to come out and say it again 2 weeks after that. He said it on the NFL Today, and I was a little bit startled by that, because when he did say that, they were in the midst of a losing streak. And, they were trying to get through all of that, and they finally did get through all of that. And yesterday, by all accounts, was probably his best game as a New York Giant player because of what was riding on it. They wanted to go out there. They wanted to kick the ass of the lowly Colts, and they did it. They did it both defensively, because the Colts offense is just horrendous and has been for 5 weeks. And they did it offensively with not only the arm, but the legs of Daniel Jones. And the thing about the Giants offense, think about the Buffalo Bills. Think about their quarterback. Think about the Giants quarterback. They're essentially the same size. There's the same kind of athletes. He doesn't have the athletes around him that Josh has up in Buffalo, Daniel Jones. But Daniel Jones put forth a performance yesterday that was almost the perfect performance for their offense. So he's going to get a contract extension, and my advice to him would be, while I would look other places if I had a chance to do it, they could put a transition tag on him if they wanted to, or a franchise tag on him if they wanted to. While I would look other places to try to get the number up for the Giants, why would you want to go play for a different coaching staff or a different coach and be in a different offense?
Yeah, I'm sure that he would love to stay here, and you're right. I mean, there could be a team or two out there, maybe the Raiders. There could be somebody that looks at Daniel Jones if he hits free agency, and maybe he wants to go out there and listen to everybody, but he would be nuts to leave Brian Daboll, because to me, Brian Daboll has to be, not even a question, the coach of the year from what he took this franchise in the beginning of it. And they didn't have to, because think about the offseason. They were hamstrung by the cap in a very big way.
They had to get rid of players.
They had to get rid of players. It was not normally do you take over a rebuild where you're over the cap, like Joe Shane and Brian Daboll took over. And yes, they had the 2 very high picks, but it's not like they added a ton. They really didn't. They were just trying to put together a semblance of a roster in this year and see what they had before they could really put their fingerprints on this team, and Brian Daboll took those guys, squeezed the best out of every single one of them, got rid of guys who were not contributing, traded guys away who weren't buying in, sat down guys regardless of their contract status, and put in players who wanted to win and work hard. And now they are in the playoffs. They are locked into the 6th seed. He has to be the coach of the year. And when this team gets even more talented, which they will over the next couple of years, I mean, that's going to be really exciting to see what he could do with that roster.
Well, they got to hit it in the draft like they did this year, and that's going to be important. And guys like a guy like Daniel Bellinger is a perfect example of that. A guy that when he was drafted, the Giants were excited that they got him, but the fan base was like, who is this guy? What is he all about? And unfortunately, he gets his eye poked, and he misses a bunch of games. But then when he finally comes back, what is he? He's a legitimate, solid tight end. Now, the things that the Giant fans need to look at, come this offseason, when it comes to the salary cap part of the NFL, you have to look at your quarterback remaining somewhere around 15% of the cap or less. If he's more than 15% of the cap, then he better be a top 5 player, and he better be camouflaging other areas where you can't spend because you're spending to keep him. I think the Giants and Daniel Jones feel to me like they're in the right spot for each other. Daniel's going to flourish under this coach, this coaching staff, and this offense. This team, this owner seem to really like Daniel Jones, and it seems like it's a sensible marriage as long as the money doesn't get out of hand and out of whack, which I don't think it will. I can't imagine somebody offering Daniel Jones, let's just say, 5 years, $40 million a year. I don't see that happening anywhere else, and I don't think that the Giants should have to pay that kind of money to keep him here, because I think that they have found a happy medium. They got a really good quarterback. He's not an all-pro yet. He's not an all-star yet. But he's gotten progressively better as the year has gone on, and the bigger the games, the better he's played.
And before we even get to that, I mean, why not make some noise in the NFC playoffs? Because this NFC is something that, I mean, you'd mentioned the Eagles at the top of the show, how they have had their issues. The Cowboys have had their issues. The Minnesota Vikings have had their issues. The 49ers, all of a sudden, against Jarrett Stidham, looked like they had one of the worst defenses in football yesterday. How that happens, I have no idea. So you want to talk about a wide open NFC. I mean, this is exactly what it is. And I told you there is only one way for this NFC season to go and this NFL season to go for me, and that is for the New York Giants to go into Minnesota and beat the Minnesota Vikings. Because that's going to happen. It's going to. I said it 3 weeks ago. It is going to happen. I already know, because that is the worst case scenario of all time, and that will happen. I said it 3 weeks ago. You said, "Oh, come on, stop it." No, it will happen. I will tell you right now, January 2nd, 6:08. The New York Giants will go into Minnesota and beat the Vikings, and that will be the worst week of my life.
All right, that's right. That would be a 6-3 matchup, and the Giants are locked in the 6th seed. Tampa is locked in the 4 seed. Everything else in terms of seeding is still up, depending on what happens in Week 18 and what happens with certain teams. Now, Green Bay, if they win their final game against Detroit, they are in, which is really amazing when you think about it. When you think Tom Brady somehow wills his team to get to 8-8, and they beat a Panther team that fell apart in the fourth quarter yesterday. And, of course, there's a screw-up on one of the snaps, and Sam Darnold fumbles it. And it's just like, and I'm like, God, why would I even think that the Panthers, with all the momentum that they had for Steve Wilkes and everything else, were going to go into Tampa Bay and beat Tom Brady?
Yeah, I mean, I picked the Panthers as well.
Who throws for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Well, I mean, the Bucs have been so disappointing, though. I mean, I understand that Tom Brady, with a season on the line, is probably going to show up, but they have been awful for majority of the year.
I know they have been. And listen, when the games mattered the most, he showed up. And this whole thing with Philadelphia right now and Jalen Hurts, it's a thing. It's a real thing. I mean, it goes to show you why, if he could have stayed healthy, he could have won the MVP this year.
Oh, sure. I mean, you could make a case that he would still win the MVP, because look at what happened to the team after he went out hurt. So, I mean, it's fascinating. Anybody can win any week in the NFC. I mean, it would not shock me. I know Tony Romo was saying yesterday during the Packer-Viking game, he's like, I really think it's important, to have the home field this year more than ever in the NFC, like the 1 and 2 seeds I'm really looking at. And I was thinking to myself, well, of course, I mean, obviously you want to have home field, but isn't this the year, though, where you're like, toss all that stuff out? It's been nuts.
I would say that San Francisco, if they get the home and Buffalo gets the home, those two teams at home would be very, very difficult to beat if they both get the number one seed.
Wouldn't you say the same thing about the Eagles with a healthy Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, but I don't know how healthy he is, man. I'm telling you, I think it's a collarbone issue, a clavicle issue. It's something in that right shoulder. They had him, video out there throwing on the practice field earlier this week, and I'm like, again, it's like with the Mike White situation. That's not really Mike White you're watching out there yesterday. He's not going to say that. He wants to play, wants to put himself out there. He's playing with some stupid flak jacket on, thing weighs like 30 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not the same player as the player that we saw when he's healthy, like the player that beat the Bears, the player that was playing well in Buffalo until he got hurt. And what you saw yesterday was that's the fraction of the player that he truly is, because he's not 100%. And he's out there, and I'm sure every hit he took, he felt it. Every throw he threw, he felt it. He's trying to protect himself. He's checked down Charlie there for a while. He was completely inaccurate. The ball was fluttering out of his hands. That's not the player that you believed in, all right? And that doesn't mean that you won't believe in him next year, because he'll be healthier next year. It'll be interesting to see whether or not he plays again this week in a meaningless game against Miami. And it's meaningless for the Jets. It's not meaningless for Miami, and it's not meaningless for other teams that will be impacted by that game if the Jets could win, like the Steelers.
Right. Who are still alive somehow, some way. Everything broke their way.
That was a war last night.
Yeah, a typical Ravens-Steelers game. But, Mike White, though, the problem is 2 years in a row, the same thing happened, where he burst onto the scene. He won a game in unbelievable fashion. Then he ends up getting hurt. And then he comes back and plays not 100% and is terrible. Same thing happened last year after the Indianapolis Colts game. Injures his elbow, comes back, tries to play against the Bills. They get killed. He's awful, throws a bunch of picks. And then the same thing happened here. Fractures multiple ribs, comes back probably too early to try to save the season because the Jets' quarterback situation is what it is. And he was brutal yesterday.
They were the whole team was brutal. The whole team was flat. That's on the coach, by the way. The coach, again, is got to get his defense. They got to get turnovers. They got to, they have to support their 75% healthy quarterback, and they were unable to do that. Their offensive line has been such a mishmash combination, and they have just been absolutely, overwhelmed. The Seattle defense, they lose 4 in a row going into this game?
Yeah, I mean,
and they've been terrible.
Just absolutely awful. And the Jets couldn't do a damn thing. And then right off the bat, I mean, you give up that giant run to Kenneth Walker. I mean, and then they score immediately. And the whole thing, it just felt like the Seahawks were in control right away, and they were not letting up.
So now for the Jets, G, they're back in the quarterback market again.
God.
I don't want to hear about Zach Wilson or anything else. Number one, I don't think Zach Wilson wants to be here. Wouldn't blame him if he wanted to go. If the agent's in there saying, look, he doesn't want to be here, doesn't want to be around this group, around this fan base, whatever. I could understand that. I totally understand that. I would think that you could sit here and the Jets can say, well, we can rehabilitate this guy and all this other stuff. I think it's going to be another offense in here. I feel like it. I feel like there has to be changes to this coaching staff. There's going to have to be. It's the reality of the business. It happened to my buddy Frank in Indianapolis. Things happen, pressures rise. The fan base is going to be screaming. Again, I always talk to you about the business side as telling the field side, the playing side, that this is we can't sell this. We need to sell something. So I was thinking, there are going to be a bunch of quarterbacks that are going to be available, and the question is, if they want to go the free agent route, which they're going to have to do, I don't know whether they're not going to be able to start over with another quarterback. Who is the free agent quarterback that best fits whoever the Jets have if they keep Mike LaFleur as their offensive coordinator, or they bring in a new offensive coordinator, or the evaluation says that we need to keep Mike White, but we're going to need somebody else in here just to infuse energy. And we all know who the quarterbacks look like they're going to be when it comes to free agency. Derek Carr being one of them, Baker Mayfield being one of them. Daniel Jones potentially being one of them, although I don't think he'll make it to that point.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy Garoppolo, again, another guy that gets hurt all the time. I don't know if he's built for New York. I know for a fact that Derek Carr is not built for here. I know for a fact. And I know that he's a quarterback that while we all like him and respect him, he will not run with the ball. He just will not run with the ball. And if he's not going to run with the ball in today's NFL, you got a problem. You need a quarterback that's going to get you 3 to 4 first downs on the ground every single game. And I'm not saying called runs. I'm just saying, explosive runs that, you see these young quarterbacks all making. He's just not one of those guys. He wants to sit in that pocket. He wants to survey the field. He wants to overthrow a few guys. He wants to hit a couple guys. He wants to have some big numbers. But at the end of the day, he's not a fit here personality-wise, and I don't think he's a fit here playing-wise for what the Jets need.
Yeah, this is going to be the discussion the entire offseason. This is what it's going to be. Who will be the Jets starting quarterback next year? And because they are where they are in the draft, it's not like they're picking 1, 2, 3, and they feel like they've got to take a quarterback at the top of the draft. It's not going to be it. It's going to be one of these guys that we've talked about.
Who I'd be kicking the tires on?
Baker Mayfield?
100%.
Yeah, I knew you'd say that.
100%. I think the Raiders are going to be kicking the tires on him, too.
Man, I want to believe that he's got something left.
He's got a lot left.
But
I'm just telling you, if he came here and was able to turn this thing on and came here with and had the right system and everything else going for him like he does out in LA's, you got to throw all this stuff. Part of it you throw out and part of it you don't, but what Sean McVay has got out of him in such a short period of time, it tells me that, man, he'd be a lively character for what we do and how we do it. He would be an amazing personality here.
All right, it is Boomer and Gio just getting started on this Monday morning. The Giants are in the playoffs. The Jets are eliminated. CeeLo in for Jerry is going to break it all down for you in just a couple of minutes.